Good afternoon, listeners, and welcome back to PW Grosser's Environmental Echo. I'm Paul Boyce, President and CEO of PW Grosser, and your host for today. And I want to welcome you to join us for our second part of our two-part series. So something we touched on a little bit earlier. We talked about Ronkonkoma and the sewage treatment plant, and sewage. This is a topic that comes up again and again in PW Grosser podcast. We're Long Island focused for the most part, and Suffolk County in particular, large portions of it are unsewered. But as environmental engineers, we design a variety of wastewater treatment systems, from residential to regional applications. And I know you guys, you built up a pump station to allow Ronkonkoma Hub project for that project to move forward. How important is the availability of commercial wastewater collection and treatment systems to developments like these?
I think developments don't happen without it. We did a project recently for a third-party client in Port Jefferson Station for Brightview Assisted Living, and they created a treatment plant in the backyard because they had the property to do it. But I think you'll see, and you have seen, the revitalization efforts of the downtowns and the successful ones. Every one of those downtowns has sewer. And if you don't have sewer, you can't put the right kinds of density. And that's incredibly important for downtown revitalization. But I think we learned that organizationally really early on because we have a medical and research office park off of Belmead Road. And one of our first tenants was doing research for blood tests that could detect HIV. I think this was back in the 80s. And they needed to change their waste stream daily. And if you're not on sewer, you're filing a permit.
Lot of work.
And so if you're trying to invent something that's going to change the lives of millions of people, but the lack of, sewer prevents you from actually doing that. And then it prevents us regionally from attracting companies who might be interested in providing, that kind of service to the world. So Long Island, from an economic development side, suffers. You can't create the density. You can't do the economic development. It's probably the number one most important aspect of development on Long Island.
I couldn't agree with you more. Our firm, we're very actively involved in this, as we said, from, single-family homes to regional scale applications, and that includes, not only building new plants, but collection, conveyance systems, pump stations, like I said, at Ronkonkoma Hub. How far do you guys have to pump that wastewater? Not Ronkonkoma. I keep saying the hub.
It's it originally always known as, and that was what the RFP went out as, Ronkonkoma Hub. We decided to change the name to Station Yards for a multitude of reasons. One, because it's it just sounds a little cooler, I think, but I think our pump station there, somebody said it is the longest forced main in the country, but it's between 7 and 10 miles. I'm not entirely sure.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
It's a great feat of engineering, and I'm a big undertaking for you guys to do to get that project up and running.
There's a lot of people involved in that, in the county, and every street and road that it went through in different villages, and so there was a lot of hands that touched that.
I believe we got involved with some of the geotech on that, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, that's
punching some holes in the ground before they laid the pipe.
Well, that's like I said, it was not a solely TRITEC-led effort. It was the county, the town.
You gotta give them credit.
Everybody pitched in, and I think, just like we said, it's the most important thing we can do.
It is, and that's why you got all that collaboration and cooperation from not just engineering firms and yourself, but those agencies, the county, the state, the towns that had to go through. Not an easy thing to undertake. But back to the revitalization, with like pre-existing site. And you touched on this a little bit. What are some of the typical environmental hurdles you guys encounter? Is it asbestos? Is it lead paint? Do you get involved with any type of environmental cleanups? Let's just say it's like a brownfield. There might have been an old spill there or something. Have you guys ever undertaken work like that?
I wouldn't say I know all of those answers, but I would say that we have dealt with asbestos. We've dealt with lead paint. We've dealt with those kinds of things on site. I know when we did Port Jefferson, there was the, I guess the plume that came out of where it was in Northridge? Was that I forget where the plume originated, but it comes down, and so there was monitoring wells.
Oh, right. We were involved with that. Yes, okay, absolutely.
So,
now it's coming back to me. Yeah, oh yeah.
But it didn't touch our property, and there was, so I think there's still some monitoring wells that are on the neighboring property, but so I can't really answer to say like this is everything that but I do know that we go through the process and follow all the letters.
You
and
absolutely have to. I mean, have you guys encountered a lot of lead paint in the past, or asbestos, or anything else that's
Yeah, well, like on some of the properties where you have, like I mentioned, the Lindenhurst project, that was a 90-year-old industrial building, and then it was divided up, and it had all this weird stuff in it, and and then largely unused in a lot of it. So yeah, there was a lot of asbestos, so you have to do all the remediation and everything before you can even demolish the building. So there's a lot of that. I think there was also some in Bay Shore, again, go through the remediation process.
That was the old college.
It was Touro College,
thank you.
And then I think they had like a social services building, so the municipal building, and kind of had a couple of different iterations.
History there.
Yeah, a couple of different iterations.
Got it.
Not overly pretty architecture, so it wasn't.
I've seen it.
So I think that people should be happy with the way it came out. We go back to that, tying back to the history. So the 3rd Avenue side of that building mimics Stag the Coast Manor, which is one of the manor houses that were that's still there in Bay Shore. And then you have the Mechanicsville and 4th Avenue side. It ties back to what used to be on Main Street and 4th Avenue, so you could see these architectural similarities, and they're all kind of designed into the project. And that one is a crazy project because it has all these different facades. BHC Architecture, Sal Coco and his team.
We worked with him at the shipyard.
Yeah. Phenomenal
great guy.
group. And
great guy, yeah.
I think they did a great job of breaking down the scale of the building. So you kind of you have all these different facades. It feels very segmented for a building that's, it is a large building.
I got to get over there and tell you, I didn't realize it's going to start occupancy next month, which is literally, we're at the end of October, so we're weeks away.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I just walked through it yesterday. It's a crazy project. It's great. It has over 50,000 square feet of amenities. So you have, and they're active amenities. So you have a pickleball court, a golf simulator. You have a 1,600 square foot pool. You have a hammock farm. You have all these really cool things that you can do. You have a bocce court. It's indoor. You have shuffleboard. You have ping pong. So it's really kind of it's a great place. I like the fact that a lot of these amenities are active. So if you live there, if you have a studio, if you have a 1-bedroom, you want to go downstairs, you want to move around a little bit. Yeah, but then you have co-working spaces, and you have a library, you have small breakout rooms that you can rent, and that goes again to the people who are not commuting to work all the time. So it gives them a place where they can get out of their apartment, they can work in one of these smaller reservable rooms, and it's
sounds like a great space.
It is a great space. It's just crazy to see how the world is evolving amenities wise, dealing with the things that we've dealt with, going through COVID and learning how people are living, and it is it's a crazy transition, you know.
Well, speaking of crazy, I only have a couple more questions, and I promise I'll cut you free in a moment. But, you know, as a development company, a real estate company, you know, how have you guys been impacted by like inflation, interest rates being up, supply chain issues since COVID? I mean, any of this affecting you guys?
I think we've been affected by all of it.
Yeah.
You know, I think through the COVID piece, you had a lot of the supply chain issues and making sure that you could secure the materials that you needed to build a project. And that was, you know, deciding between getting the deliverables at the highest possible price versus not being able to bring the project in on time. And that's something that we pride ourselves on, is bringing projects in on time.
You guys are great at it, yeah.
So, so a lot of decisions got made along the way there. From a financing perspective now, it's what projects are you going to bring online, because there's getting a project financed, the kinds of projects we build, you have to attract the capital. And like in the case of Ronkonkoma, I think we've done probably about $450 million of investment in Ronkonkoma to this point right now.
Wow.
And $450 million can live anywhere it wants to. You know, it can go anywhere in the world. So it can go to Tokyo, Paris, Milan, whatever, you know, wherever, New York City. And then we had to convince $450 million to come to Ronkonkoma. And same thing, $173 million to live in Bay Shore. And so you have to make sure that you can create a project, you know, that your investors are okay with.
Obviously, inflation, labor rates go up, things like that. Has that impacted you guys in terms of being able to, you know, have you had to make any decisions like, okay, well, now we can't put in, you know, hardy board or hardy plank, we got to switch to vinyl or something?
No, we haven't had to make those decisions right now because the projects that we have, that long development cycle, you know, in some respects has helped in that regard. And creating new projects, though, we're not going to sacrifice quality. There's certain benchmarks that we bring to a project, and it's going to be a quality development. It's going to be delivered on time. Those kinds of things are things that are promises that we make to the municipalities, promises that we make to our own tenants, and promises we make to our partners. So if the financing rates and the material costs and all of that stuff don't line up, then we're not going to start that project right now.
Have you, instead of trading off on, say, quality, have you had to trade off on quantity then? Did you have to reduce the size of the project or the number of units or anything like that? Have you been impacted?
Well, I would say that the number of units, the more units you add to it, the better it is from a financial perspective, because you could divide the costs.
The economy of scale, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you know, if the project we did together was about, you know, $45 million for 112 units. New Village, which was only completed shortly before that, 291 units at $112 million. So, yeah, definitely better to have that density. Can't get the density without the wastewater.
Yep.
All the stuff ties back in.
It's all a vicious circle, Chris. Yeah. Oh, I love it. All right, we'll wrap it up. So what does the future hold for Long Island regarding new development? Can you tell us about any new opportunities you guys are pursuing, and what's on the horizon, or is that, you know, still held closely to the vest here?
No, there's a couple of things that, I mean, certainly the rest of Ronkonkoma, we're only about, you know, we've only developed about 20 of the 53 acres that are there. So we still have the right to build about 600, I guess, 650 units.
Wow.
In that 53 acres, we can add another 350 or so, 350,000 square feet of office space, which again is another difficult task right now in the current market. And then we have 70,000 square feet of retail that we're leasing now. we have the right to build another 125,000 square feet of retail. So all of that stuff, as financing sort of comes in line and demand is where it is, then we'll be able to bring those online. So our next project there will be 175 units and only 1,350 square feet of retail on the opposite side of what we're building now. And then we had an opportunity to answer an RFP in Smithtown that sort of is in accordance with their master plan. The selection process is still ongoing, so we'd hope to be able to get to do that project in Smithtown or a project in Smithtown. It's a wonderful place. Some of our executives are residents of the town, so it's it's always nice to work close to home. Although when you guys were working on the shipyard, Bob Coggin's home you could hit with a 5-iron.
Yeah, that was tight.
Yeah. And it made our superintendents and project managers a little nervous, I guess, because the
boss is watching, huh?
Well, we had 1,200 piles.
I remember. I was there.
So they knew he knew every day what time they got started while we were putting the piles in, because you could hear it pounding all through the village.
Like an alarm clock for them.
Exactly. So I think that would be another opportunity that we'd love to get a chance to do. And then we have some other things we're working on that we are keeping a little close to the
That's
vest.
cool.
That's some good stuff.
Well, Chris, this has been fantastic. You've really enlightened us, and I hopefully our listeners have enjoyed hearing this. And I've got a better understanding of development on Long Island and often what it takes and why we need it, and all the other aspects such as wastewater, and transit, and we go on. But any closing thoughts or any ideas or topics we didn't cover that you want to mention before we sign off?
Not so much. I just want to thank you guys for what you guys do. In wastewater is literally, I think, the most important thing. It's, drinking water, it's development, it's, economic development, it's environmental, it touches every aspect. So, what you guys do and the knowledge you bring is phenomenal. And so I know sometimes discouraging. I know in the development business, it's really difficult to get things done. Same thing for you guys. So keep it up.
Well,
Don't give up.
We appreciate it. I know wastewater is not always a sexy topic, and it's usually out of sight, out of mind, and nobody thinks about it until the toilet backs up, right? That's when we, besides the plumbers, that's when the engineers get the calls. Yeah. But again, Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been very informative, and hopefully, our listeners take something away from it. But I do want to wrap up by saying, again, this is PWGC's Environmental Echo, our monthly podcast. I'm Paul Boyce, the CEO and president of PWGC, and your host. I do want to thank our listeners for taking the time today, or whatever day you're listening to this, for spending a few minutes with us. And that's it for today. Thanks, folks. Thank you for joining us on this episode of PWGC's Environmental Echo. Download and listen to this episode on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or by visiting our website, www.pwgrocer.com/podcast. For more content like this, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode.